Well, we've just finished the James series, and as usual, we do a little bit of a wrap. I think in this, I actually did a James series in the church maybe 15 years ago or something, which I look back to.
And those of us who were part of the church 15 years ago remember it.
Every
It was
word,
yesterday.
every message.
Yeah.
The interesting thing was how it's the same message, but it really was quite fresh for me as we went through it again. And the emphasis that really came strongly to me was that idea of James not just saying have works, but saying have a living faith, have a real faith that actually makes a difference in your life. And I think throughout the whole thing, as we were looking at the different chapters and applications, because he does maybe 8 or 10 applications throughout it, it really was just still that fundamental message of develop a real living faith, not just a religious duty thing. And if you do that, then this stuff will automatically flow out of your life.
Yeah.
And I think you took on a couple of those really clear applications.
I did,
And I thought actually the second one you did on that connection with God was really lifting that to that level as well, of that real, genuine connection.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one was on the power of our tongue and how words are very powerful and have great influence and impact on others and on ourselves. Surprisingly, what stood out to me in that first message of mine and focusing on words was the power of what we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
I sort of made the joke on the day that, you know, the person we speak to the most in our life is probably ourselves. And so what we say to ourselves, and if we're going to be talking that much to ourselves, you know, not out loud in public.
Hopefully.
Yes, hopefully. But that changes us, that affects us. And so what are we saying to ourselves to build ourselves up, to lift ourselves up, and to speak truth? And the same applies to others in our lives as well. So yeah, that was that focus. But there was a second message that I felt very strongly that God was drawing people to himself, because James is very clear. He's speaking to Jewish people that have been scattered around the Roman Empire because of persecution. And so they're no longer at their home church and they're, at home, living around familiar territory. And they've become like the world.
Yeah.
And Jesus sent people out into the world to reach the world, not to become like the world, but to reach and love the world. But James is saying, and again, I made the joke, well, not the joke, but N.T. Wright summarizes, the Bible Project summarizes the book of James as a beautifully crafted punch to the guts. And I think that's a great summary because it's an incredible book. There's a lot of illustration and metaphor in there, but it's very clearly a tough,
strong challenge,
straight message to the people. And in that message, James is very much saying, hey, you guys have become like the world, and you need to separate yourselves from the patterns and the culture of the world, not separate like the monks did, that you leave the world, but separate yourselves culturally so that you can be the Christian community that's going to honor God and reach the world.
Yeah. I think you talk about that punch, I think the real punch is he's saying to them, if you're doing that, if you're being worldly or you're trying to please the Jewish hierarchy and so on, you don't really have a faith. It's kind of like Jesus saying, I never knew you.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of punch that says you actually come back to a genuine, real faith.
That's right,
that will live out the values of the kingdom. And he tops and tails it, and that was the last bit, was he tops and tails it with this thing about perseverance in suffering and trials. And he was saying, you're going to have to persevere. And the way you do that is by actually drawing close to the presence of God. So that last chapter goes on. He talks about perseverance and about prayerfulness. Whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether things are going good or bad, you're going to seek God.
Yeah.
And, I know in the small groups, we actually got talking about trusting God in the midst of whatever's going on in our lives. That if things are going well, don't turn away from him and think, well, I've done it. And if things are going badly, don't blame him and go away, but always have that inclination to turn towards God, which I think is fundamentally what James is saying. Yeah. And if you do that, it'll show up in your life. It'll be real.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're about.
That's it. Book of James.
Woo!
There we go. Thanks.